Yeah. My name is Jim Vicini. We have a group here assembled to talk about the Scotia disaster that occurred on March 9th and 11th of 1976 and some of the changes that have occurred in preparation to make an exhibit for the Kentucky Coal Mine Museum. On March 9th in 1976, a disaster occurred at the Scotia Mine on the Letcher County line. And it was a significant event in the history of mining. The people present here today were all involved in rescue attempts for the event, and we're going to talk about that today. Myself, I was working for U.S. Steel at the time. I was a section foreman on the evening shift, and I was called at home that morning and told that an emergency had occurred at the Scotia Mine to assemble at the mine rescue station. I was a team member at the time, and as our team did assemble, and we did go to the Scotia Mine and attempt to rescue miners. We spent a long time there. As I said, there were 2 explosions on March the 9th and 11th. To me, on March the 9th, it was a very exciting time. I'd never been to anything like this, and we really didn't know what to expect. We were at the mine, for that entire day until we located and recovered all the people that were involved in the disaster. On the second explosion, it was a lot more serious to all of us, I think, than the first. The first time, to me, in my recollection, is I wasn't nearly as scared the first time as I was the second, because knowing that it had happened the second time, let us know that it could happen again, and it was just a very, very tragic event and a very sad time. I'm going to let the others talk about. Burley, do you want to tell us about where you were at the time?
Well, I was a section foreman, Jim, just like you at that time. A young mine rescue captain of Beth Elkhorn's mine number 29 mine rescue team located in Letcher County. And I got the call about 1 o'clock in the day. I think you guys had already got an earlier call, and we were more or less called in as a backup team to back up U.S. Steel and International Harvester and National Mines Corporation and Westmoreland Coal Company. I know I'll leave someone out, but these were the ones that were in our area and the fastest one to get to the job. So we assembled our team and left coming to the mine site, and we were back up on the surface for some other teams, and then we had to give them a break, so we went underground approximately 6:30 on the 9th, and proceeded to the fresh air base, where we were given places to go and further assignment by injured personnel. And we explored up to the locomotive, and also explored up into the left-hand panel. And it was, like I said, I was young at that time. It was real nerve-wracking for me, and part of my crew members were younger than me. So, but we had trained for this for approximately 5 years, every summer, and attended many mine rescue contests to be tested on how we would respond to a disaster of this nature. And I think we did real well. I was real proud of all the mine rescue teams, and it was a pleasure for me to back up U.S. Steel and International Harvester and Westmoreland, and a pleasure to have them back me up. I didn't hesitate. I felt like the teams behind me and in front of me were good enough that if there was anything in harm's way, they would let me know. Okay,
and I guess as Burley said, we're we're just a few team members out of the many that were there. We happened to be still around, and we were able to get in touch with, but well, again, we're just a very few. Don Disney, you want to?
Yeah, you're correct. We definitely don't want to leave out any team member or any company that volunteered on any basis, where they participated in the actual recovery work or any way they participate. So we definitely don't want to leave anyone out.
Don, you want to?
Well, I'm like they are. We don't want to leave anyone out of this rescue operation. But I'd like to say where I was at. I worked third shift, which is the hoot-out shift. And I was in bed when this happened. And they called me out. And we went. By the time I got to the mines, they'd already had their equipment about ready to go. And we got there at this mine site, and they said they'd had an explosion or whatever, and they wanted us to go underground immediately when we got there. And but in our training, we have to have a mine rescue backup team to back us up before we even went in. So we had to wait until we got a backup team. And U.S. Steel came in. When they got there, we went underground then. We was the first team went under. And they backed us up. And which I couldn't ask for any better backup team, because that was our competition and our contest. And but you know, everything was out of ordinary, but I think what comes to my mind mostly is do as you're trained to do. You know, do it like you're trained to. And I think mostly that's what was in all mine rescue teams said, is to do it the way we was trained to do.
Thank you, Don. Lonnie?
I was sitting in a staff meeting at International Harvester when the phone rang in a staff meeting, and usually they don't take the too many calls at a staff meeting, and I saw Raymond answer it, and Raymond Williams. He was the operations director at that time. And I knew there was something wrong because of the way he looked after he took the phone call. And there was, I think, 3 of the mine rescue team that was in the staff meeting at that time. And he said, gentlemen, get your rescuers and call Rody. Rody Kirk at that time was the trainer. And he said they had an ignition at Scotia. So from that point, we immediately went to get our stuff together. And I was sort of like these gentlemen here. We had been trained and worked problems in the state and national contest, and we were trained to do this. And it was a sense of excitement, I guess. You know, you just want to put your training to work. And so we got on the bus, and we were the first team that was there, like Don said, and then U.S. Steel came and backed us up. The second explosion was a little different for me, just like it was these other guys. I was scared to death because I knew it happened one time. It wasn't exciting then. It wasn't. It was something that distilled a great fear in me. And really and truly, I had thoughts of my own self where I wanted to go or not. But once we got there, and we thought that there was some that had made some established calls in the mines. So that took away a lot of it, because there was a lot of people down there that was depending on us to get them out of the mines. So I had a lot of mixed feelings at that time, but we did respond both times, and it wasn't a very pleasurable experience with me, and it stayed with me all of my life. Each time that I hear a disaster in a coal mine now, I recall that, and it'll stay with me probably until the day I die. It was a real tragic for everybody concerned. I lost a lot of friends there that I knew well, and I wouldn't want to have to do it again.
Thank you, Larry. Monroe?
Yeah, my name's Monroe West, and at the time of this occurrence, I was a sub-district manager in the Mining Enforcement and Safety Administration stationed in Northern Virginia. And I had a pretty good knowledge of the Scotia Mine because when it was within our district, I inspected the mine for about 4 years. And as a result of that, when the explosion did occur, about 15 or 20 minutes after pipe voltage, which was it was inspected out, the pipe voltage at that time, called me and told me about the explosion and wanted to know if I would come over. So I immediately got ready and with the district manager, and we arrived at the Scotia Mine pretty early. And as always, when you have something like that, it was a sort of a mass state of confusion and people running helter-skelter here and there. But we finally got a command center set up, and the International Harvester Mine Rescue Team arrived, and we got some maps. We got to apprising them of the situation and find out what set of entries that had occurred. And while we were doing that, the U.S. Steel team, mine rescue team came, and it wasn't too long until we started going underground. But in the meantime, they were people, Scotia employees, that committed acts of heroism there that you just couldn't imagine. They were putting themselves on the line to try to save their comrades that they worked with and worked with for years. And they refused to come out of the mine. They did not want to come out of the mine until they found out for a fact that someone could be rescued. But we finally did talk to them until we had the mine rescue teams and the oxygen breathing equipment. And if I remember correctly, there were about 20 of the employees still in the mine searching and making arrangements to go in the area where the explosion occurred. And we finally got them out and assured them that we would do everything that we possibly could to, and if there was anyone in there that we'd get them, we would get them out. We promised them that, and we did. We got them out that night. But it was a traumatic event. Traumatic not only for me, but it was traumatic for this whole eastern part of Kentucky. It was a situation that everybody knew that the Scotia Mine was liberated a lot of methane, had a lot of gas, and I knew that it did when I inspected the mine. And even the people that worked there did, and they knew the hazards. The miners that worked there knew the hazards, but yet they felt like they could control the hazards. But you'd be surprised how easy it is for just one person or one lack of diligence and awareness that observers can do in a mine, especially a mine that liberates methane like Scotia Mine does. But mentioning mine rescue teams, me being with the government, I can't say enough and give enough credit to the mine rescue teams that was at the Scotia Mine. There was the International Harvester team, U.S. Steel team, Westmoreland team, National Mine team, Beth Elkhorn's teams, Clinchfield Coal Company teams, and finally at the end, the two government teams that came in from Morgantown, West Virginia. They came down there. So we had ample supply of teams. We worked in areas during the recovery, and I'm sure that some of the mine rescue members here could remember that. We had very big problems in trying to establish ventilation all the way up in that area. But we worked in areas where there were carbon monoxide, where the last fresh air base we had up to 300 parts per million of carbon monoxide. But we were determined to find everyone, account for everyone, to see, hopefully and prayerfully, that there was still some in there that had survived. And again, it was an experience that I'll never forget. It wasn't the first mine explosion I'd been involved in, but it was probably the most traumatic one that I ever was in.
Thank you, Monroe. As we said, you know, it was a major event in the change of how mining was to be done in the future. Original mining laws were formed in 1969 when the 1969 Coal Mine Health and Safety Act came out, and we were operating under those laws, which were fairly new at the time. And the Scotia explosion changed all that through the hearings and the testimony of people that were involved and what was found. It was determined that the law was not adequate, and a lot of things changed. And you know, myself, I'm still employed in the mining industry and have been for over 32 years now, and no doubt in my mind that was the single most important event in history of mining that changed things. And now we'll talk just a little bit about that. And Monroe, would you like to start on that, on some of the things that did change because of the explosion?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. The first thing that changed, to my knowledge, was the passage of the 1977 Coal Mine Health and Safety Act. It was a big improvement over the 1969 Act. And I was involved in helping draft some of the regulations in the 1969 Act. But the 1977 Act vastly improved the requirements concerning the ventilation of coal mines. In the Scotia Mine, at that time, they were allowed, or not just Scotia Mine, but the industry was allowed through a means of airlock doors or something, ventilate more than one section with the same split of air. The 1977 Act prohibited that. Ever since then, there are no two sections, working sections, or active areas in a mine that can be ventilated on one continuous split of air. You have to have a separate split of air. If that had occurred in Scotia Mine, just that one thing would have prevented that mine explosion. Other things that have changed has been, they've been big improvements in roof control. They've been big improvements in firefighting facilities. The technology has just improved tremendously in the 20-some years, 20-odd years since the Scotia Mine explosion is concerned. The one thing that I did not and have never had agreed with was the restrictions that they put on mine rescue teams. They passed a law in the 1977 Act that required every coal mine to have available within a 2-hour traveling distance or a 1-hour traveling distance of at least 2 mine rescue teams. Now that put mine rescue teams in a position where coal companies may be liable, or the mine rescue teams could be subjected to liabilities in event they made a mistake or something. And we're always human, we make mistakes. So as a result of that, a lot of mine rescue teams did not want to participate. They would not say that they'll be part of the 2-team requirement. They would not commit themselves. Yet prior to that, Scotia is a good example. We had 6 or 7 good that I'd put up against anyone mine rescue teams in this United States. Now, in the state of Kentucky, Arch Mineral may have a mine rescue team. LECO may have a mine rescue team. But the two teams that most coal companies have put their names on that says that's going to serve their mines in event of disaster is state-maintained mine rescue teams. And I'm not saying that they're not equipped and qualified, but there's a difference in requiring to be gone, to go somewhere, than there is people that will voluntarily go and commit themselves to it. There's a big difference to it. The mine rescue equipment has the technology and the equipment that the mine rescue teams have now vastly improved from the Scotia Mine disaster. Training, I don't know so much about that. You know, I'll leave that thought up to someone else about that. But we used to have contests, mine rescue contests. They stayed trained, they stayed physically fit. And you have to be a physical specimen to serve on a mine rescue team, because you'd just be surprised what strenuous physical demands they are on a team that goes underground and even works out in the contest. So it was a commitment then. There's a difference between a commitment and a requirement. That's just a few things that I can think of, Jimbo, that there's been a vast improvement in since Scotia.
Okay, thank you, Monroe. Burley, you want to go next on anything that you know, any
Well,
changes?
Some of the training that came out of it, I think, was not as much for mine rescue training, but was the self-rescue device.
Right.
There was rigs put into place that they had to either be on the person or within 25 feet of them, and we had to make sure that all of our employees were properly trained in the self-rescue device. There was also some ventilation changes, like Monroe touched on earlier, about taking air from one section to another, and that was a change that came out of the '77 Act. Plus some changes in mine rescue about physically fit and properly trained, and the federal government started monitoring that close. So another thing that came out of it was the Kentucky legislature passed the Good Samaritan Act, which came out of the '76 Scotia explosion, where mine rescue teams could not be held liable for any wrong move that they might make. And so I think that was a good thing that came out of the legislature.
Thank you. Lonnie, what about you?
I think one of the biggest things that sticks in my mind is what Burley and Monroe's touched on. It's probably the self-contained rescuer. I feel that after the fact, that if a lot of the people that were employed there at Scotia that had lost their lives had that particular device, that there would have been a whole lot of, well, there have been fewer people that we've been talking about today. But I think that's probably the biggest thing that sticks in my mind, where ventilation, they touched on, it did change. And it changed for the best too, it really did. 2 splits of air rather than one. But I think the self-contained rescuer that afforded them oxygen would have saved a lot more lives than what it did.
Okay, thank you. Don, how about you?
Well, like we was talking a while ago, the gas detecting devices now are so much more advanced than what we had then. Our CO detectors, or methane detectors, and everything is more advanced now, and I'm sure they're more advanced than when I was 5 years ago. That we've got better ones now than we had then, and but we had I know the little squeeze bubble. What was the number of those?
Colorimetric CO detectors?
You know, on the CO detectors then. And you you had to squeeze them 3 times and take all this reading and all this, and now you just push a button and get it on a CO detector.
Instantaneous.
Digital readouts. Yeah.
So, that's one thing that.
Did you know at one time, the mining industry used canary birds
Right.
to determine if there's carbon monoxide in a mine? You know, the one thing that I give a lot of thought to, and why it has to be this way, I don't know. But it takes a bad experience for something good or some improvements to be made.
Right.
It always takes a bad experience. We have to learn, we learn from bad experiences. But I've often wondered why we could not anticipate those type of experiences and come up with solutions before they occur.
I'll expand a little bit on Monroe's comments about the difference in being committed to being a mine rescue team member and being required as the laws have changed over the years. Because I'm still currently involved with mine rescue. Instead of being a team member these days, I train teams. But so I've been in touch all the way through the years, and what he said is exactly right. Back then, it was an honor to be on a mine rescue team. You donated your Saturdays and your free times in the summers. That's what we all did. You did it on Saturdays. You practiced on Saturdays and in the evening sometimes after you did your shift of work. But today it's hard to get commitment from people to be on a mine rescue team. It's I still have to, when I lose team members and have to pick them up, it's a chore to get out and try to find someone that wants to come in and do it. And it is a requirement now, whereas back then it was not a requirement.
It was a dedication back then. That's what it was.
Yes.
There's a big difference between being required to do something, being dedicated to do something.
I can remember when we went in Scotia Mine, we set up at the fresh air base, got it established, and Lonnie may remember this. We put our face pieces on. You got straps to pull. I said, we're not playing now, so tighten them up. And so we tightened those face pieces up, but we knew what we was in.
I can remember when I came out, it took 2 days for the straps to get off mine. I had mine tied.
And what they mean by pulling the straps was make sure no outside contaminants got on the inside of the
You
face.
had to have the seal.
In contests, a lot of time we would use the word cheat a little bit, if we need to have them on. And in a contest, we get a little bit of fresh air in from the side. And so, luckily we didn't get any real bad habits because we all survived it, so.
Well, that's the reason if you got caught, you was docked in the contest, so.
There was no judges there.
No judging there, no.
Well, we still had Monroe and Charlie Samples that are still watching out for us. And they judged contests back then, and they were the people in charge of the Fresh Air Base Underground. They're the people that kept us going in the right direction and gave us the advice that we needed to do our jobs. So that.
Charlie Samples was a dedicated mine rescue man.
Yes.
Charlie Samples was a good friend of mine. And he and I directed the underground recovery operation involved the first mine explosion at Scotia. And I always valued his advice, and he and I worked good together. The second explosion occurred, I was like one of you fellows said, I was home in bed when I heard about it. That came as a complete surprise to me. And I told my wife, the phone rang, I answered it, and I said, well, I've got to go. And she said, what's wrong? I said, well, there's been another explosion in Scotia. And she said, surely not. I said, well, that's what I think too, but I said, I've got to go. So we went over there, and sure enough, there had been another explosion. And they were making an effort to go in from the main portal, and it was a pretty good distance up to the area where the second explosion occurred. And they had a shaft. Scotia had sunk an air shaft, and I think their plans were eventually to put an elevator in it and make a portal, a man-trip portal there. But anyhow, it wasn't that way then. And that's where I'll always remember days of year, because we needed it was much closer from that air shaft down to where we could hopefully find some survivors than it was to coming through the other way, the front portal. So he obtained the crane, got the crane up there, and I never will forget being dropped down in that bucket with a little steel rope tied to the bucket. And I got down to the bucket, and there's always put a sump in the bottom of the shaft to collect the water, to drain the water to get it. And there that place was full of water. And I said, and I had two other fellows with me, because I picked the two people that I wanted to go with me. I said, well, what am I going to do now? How am I going to get out of here? So I got up out of that bucket, and I jumped over that sump hole that was about 10 feet deep in there, and landed on the edge of it, and I got the bucket pulled while another fellow did. And we went within 1,000 feet of fresh air down to those people, but then they decided they would pull us out and send the Westmoreland, I believe, my rescue team in to recover them. But I just, I couldn't believe that it occurred again. I really couldn't. There were some delays occurred between the first and the second one there, that some people feel like some areas of the roof there at the overcast at the mouth of that set of entries needed to be supported. And had trouble getting some machinery, a roof building machine, down to the area to install some bolts. And during that period of time that they did that, and with the lack of ventilation that we could not establish with temporary stoppings in there, allowed that methane to reaccumulate in that area.
It's 26 miners lost their lives between March 9th and 11th. It was 15 on the 9th and 11 on the 11th. And it was a tragedy. Those were all fellow miners to all of us. And it was a tragic event. And, some major changes did occur, after that. And as a couple of the gentlemen said, when something bad happens, I think we all start looking, what's wrong with the system? Why did this happen? Just recently, in year before last in Alabama, 13 miners, I believe it was, lost their lives in an explosion. And there have been some changes since then too, but nothing as significant as what was changed after 1976. It was the biggest event in the history of mining, to my knowledge.
In every disaster, there is some miracles too.
Yes.
You're right.
There were some miracles in Scotia. At that second explosion, I know two people that just by the will of the good Lord was behind an embankment of what we call God in a coal mine. And the forces of that second explosion came in and hit that pile of gob, rock and coal and slate and so forth and so on, and shot over the top of them. And it was so dusty that they lost their lamps, their cap lamps. And they didn't know which way to go when you get disoriented. But finally they came over and they found the track, the rail. And they couldn't see, visibility was zero. And they, what we call in coal mines, cooned that rail out to where they could see. In other words, they crawled and kept their hands on that rail and felt that rail till they could get out and see. And one of them was my first cousin. Though, you know, miracles do occur. Just not there, but it has at other places also.
That was their lifeline, wasn't it?
That's right. That rail, the track, was their lifeline.
Well, unless you've ever been in the mines too, you don't realize just how dark it is. You're right, it's 0% visibility. You cannot see you cannot wave your hand in front of your eyes in that manner and see it if your light's out. It's 0.
How many of you every day this year went in a coal mine that you wasn't glad to see that little speck of daylight when you came out?
Yeah.
It's a great feeling. It's a great feeling.
You know, after the first explosion too, then we had the second one. There was so much pressure on the federal officials, the state officials, and everyone. I mean, they had the pressure on them.
Yeah, they did. We did.
And there was a lot of, you know, after that second one, it was, like Buck said a while ago, we was all scared to go back up the ground.
Yeah.
So they finally decided that they would put 2 federal inspectors walking. You may remember this, Monroe. They put 2 walking after the second one. And me and one more on the team volunteered to put breathing apparatuses on the motor and fire them underground. Well, as they would go, they was making their test or their air readings and their gas test as they went. There we was, didn't know whether it was going to blow again or not. The fear was there. We went, I don't know how far we went. I remember we went to 2 East. And we lost our ventilation. Well, I called outside. I got on the telephone. When we got there, I just picked the phone up and I said, we've lost our ventilation. Our anemometer won't turn. We busted a smoke tube and it didn't go. So they said immediately, you know, come outside, get on that motor and get back outside now. So we all came back out. Well, after a lot of discussion then, U.S. Steel's team went underground. We went in behind them and backed them up to that point. Then they found this overcast was blown out.
Right.
And the air was short-circuited in there. And I think that was when they decided
That's
to...
when they returned to their shaft.
Yeah, that's when we all come out, and then they returned, they went into their shaft that way.
You, brother, you were right. There was there was a lot of blame that went on as a result of the Scotia Mine disaster. The federal government, the state government, the company, and to be perfectly honest with you, you know, in hindsight and during all the hearings we had in Whitesburg and all the testimony that went out, there was a lot of blame to be floated around. There's no doubt in my mind that was, you know, the federal government had control of that mine at the second explosion. They had issued a 1043J order at the mine, which put them in complete control. That means that they were responsible for all the actions at that mine at the second explosion. And I'll never forget a meeting in Washington. There's not one, we had several. Well, one in particular I remember, I got taken to task, not only me, but some of the other people, for staying in there to bring all the people out after the first explosion. And they said once you made a determination that there wasn't anything you could do for them, you should have backed out and come on out. Well, I don't believe that. I don't believe that to this day. I don't believe that, because you got families that you got to think about too, you know.
Right.
And you know, if I have a brother somewhere that died in an accident, and I had the feeling, or a son, and I had the feeling that, you know, or as a result of somebody else not taking a risk to get his body or bring him back and let him lay there for 8 or 9 months, you know, that bothered me. That bothered me. It really would. And that's the reason I felt like it was important. Important.
You know, I'd like to, you know, retouch on something that Lonnie started a minute ago when he talked about the fear that we all had on the second one. The first explosion, it was pretty much common knowledge at that point that it had occurred from a locomotive. There were a couple of employees had taken it into an area that wasn't ventilated. And as we all stated, you know, the second explosion was just a total shock to everyone. We couldn't believe it had happened again. But there we all were, you know, gathered again, getting ready to go back underground, knowing that there were 11 other people trapped this time. And all of a sudden, and I'll never forget that as long as I live, one of the company representatives came in and told us that I know what happened. He said, that motor has a compressor on it, and it builds up air in a tank, and when the air leaks off, the compressor kicks back in automatically, and the contactor kicks in, it draws an arc, and it's going to happen again. And you know, that was a sobering thought to all of us, you know. And you know, it was very debatable on our parts about whether we were going to go in the mine again. You know, we didn't know what to do at that point. You know, personally myself, I was 24 years old at the time, and I had a young new son and a wife at home, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't. But it was something.
You know, the Scotia Mine, Blue Diamond Coal Company, was rather innovative in some of their mining, and I'm sure most of you can remember. They were one of the first coal companies to introduce diesel equipment in the mines in our area. They had diesel show cars, and there were not too many big, huge battery operated locomotives back in those days either. You know, that's another place where there's been a lot of improvements in the technology and development of battery powered locomotives, and as a result of that.
I'd like to get one thing in before we close, or anything, about the public that was up there. They brought more food into Scotia. I mean, anything you wanted to eat was there. They did. And the people was great.
That support was unbelievable.
Yes. I remember asking someone, I said, man, I'd like to have a chew of tobacco. 15 minutes later, I had a cart.
Yeah, I did too, so I had the same thing with me, you know. Of course, we chew a lot.
There's no saying by government employees. You know, when something occurs, you see the officer gang of government employees at the site that you're assaulting. You may see 3 or 4 of them working and 50 or 60 of them eating. And I heard a fellow say one time, said, there's one thing about the government, it sort of reminds you of a person being out in a desert dying from thirst. And the amateur came along and drowned him.
Okay.
But, you know, I'm getting at an advanced stage, I guess you would call it. I'm 78 years old almost, but I'll never forget Scotia.
Well, I don't think.
I had a lot of friends there. I really did. Still have friends that were there. And friends that were, I didn't get to see anymore.
Well, we didn't come into this thing to put blame on anyone. We work with the federal government people and the Kentucky Department of Mines and Minerals, along with all the other mine rescue teams, and like Monroe was talking about, Dave Zaguer coming up with a crane for to drop people into the power shaft, you know. So and the Scotia employees too. I mean, and the people in the community, like all the sandwiches and the tobacco and all that. So, you know, it was a combination of everyone doing whatever they could, hoping that we could save someone's life.
Right.
And that's what we're trained for. And Jimbo's still active in it. And I miss it. I still go to all the concerts.
Yeah, Merle's always there.
Sort of like basketball, everything gets in your blood. But we hope we never have to go to another disaster.
Now, in closing, I would say, you know, March 9th and 11th, 1976 were 2 dark days in, as far as the history of mining. And a lot of things were learned on those days. A lot of things have changed for the better. But, you know, some of the same hazards still exist today.
Yes.
The mines still liberate methane. And as we talked a little bit before, Scotia Mine was not an excessively gassy mine. As my recollection, I think they liberated about 250,000 cubic feet of methane in a 24-hour period, which is not that much. You know, the mines that I'm involved with today liberate more than that. But the laws changed to enable us to better deal with those things. We've gained a lot of valuable experience. Our training has improved tremendously, but still the hazards are there, and I think anybody involved in the mining industry knows that it just takes one person to drop the ball and we could be facing the same type of situation again. So with that, we thank you.